Hello, everybody, and welcome along once again to RPL Recap. It is our first recap of the first week in the off-season. Although we have some off-season races coming up, we have a lot to talk about from Abu Dhabi in Tier 1 and Tier 3 and Saudi Arabia in Tier 2. Stewards report has finally come out, and JTK lost his Abu Dhabi win in the stewards room. Leo Lund in the Haas was also penalized 10 seconds, keeping him off the podium again, trying to get Haas's first podium. And EA/Cody's surprised people with yet another beta for people to test. However, the circuits stayed the same this time, and that one was not announced this time. That one was last moment. However, I'm here to talk about this week with Polish.
What's up?
Our first topic about Jak Miles, because he seems to do well in Abu Dhabi, but he didn't finish on the podium in Abu Dhabi. However, throughout Season 12, in that campaign, he got 17 podiums to his name and a first title. Polish, welcome along. We'll have SV for 5 good minutes later on. But right now I want to talk about, with Jak moving to Ferrari, regardless of not really doing well in our last race in Abu Dhabi, only off the podium 3 times last season. Does this make him the favorite, even though the car is worse as of right now, compared to the McLaren?
I think he's definitely up there. I mean, you've got plenty of Tier 1 drivers that I think can definitely make a splash in Jak Miles' champion campaign, if you will. I'm just trying to think of people off the head. You got like both the McLarens that can make a splash. Obviously just being in the faster car is going to help. That's just something that Jak doesn't really have going for him, is that the Ferrari is not the fastest car. I think it's going to be like second or third fastest. So he'll definitely still have a fast car, but it's going to be. He's going to have a little bit of work to do, I think. But he'll be up there.
This is not the first time that Jak's been in the Ferrari in RPL F1. He was in the Ferrari before, back in Season 9 and the start of Season 10. So it's a tough one to tell. However, if Florian and Cryptic do not show up and really, I guess, get SOL, because the McLaren is going to be the fastest car based on the car performance right now, then you got to look at whoever they pace as the second fastest. Mercedes, maybe, and that's with Cookie and Gecko, which we'll talk about in a moment. I mean, Jak just has to keep the same pace he had in this game, because outside of Leo and Skither, Jak was probably the fastest driver. So, in all honesty, Polish, I think he can outperform that Ferrari wherever that Ferrari may be placed. So, it's tough to tell, but again, Jak's got to make the most of everything too. Jak got a lot of these podiums on days he was not the fastest driver, but was probably one of the more consistent drivers, had the race pace, got the finishes, and sometimes you got to take advantage of the chaos. We know that from Tier 3, but Tier 1 has the same amount of chaos every once in a while too, and Jak did that a lot. That's why he had 17 podiums of the 20 races.
Yeah, and obviously it's very impressive, 17 podiums, but I think there's also more people in Tier 1 that could definitely outperform their equipment that they're given. Cookie is definitely one of them in the Merc. I think people like also his teammate TV in the other Ferrari, I think, could be a good shout. But yeah, that's at least what I see. But going to the next topic we have here. Speaking of Cookie, actually him and Gecko are paired together for the next game. Is this good or bad, in your personal opinion?
First off, congratulations, Cookie, on winning in Abu Dhabi. He broke a 36 race drought. Very nice to see there. I think this is good for them too, because they actually have to work together now. Instead of Cookie and Gecko bashing heads the way they did last season, they have an opportunity to not do that. And in order for them not to bash heads, they need to be teammates. And we saw them teammates before. Some of you might remember Season 10 Portugal. The pair qualified 1-3, I believe it was, and finished 1-2. So, yeah, they were Academy teammates back when Cookie won the championship. Gecko was no issue then, but they became, I guess, enemies when they weren't teammates in Season 11 and 12 throughout this whole game cycle. And probably, well, maybe we'll talk about it later, I'm not sure, but probably one of the biggest rivalries that was on this game cycle. Maybe the biggest, because they just bashed heads and clashed way too many times. Polish, I think for Mercedes, though, they could have the second fastest car. And if you want to beat McLaren, you need two drivers who can work together. And hopefully they could put their differences, at least on track, aside and maybe settle this and maybe give Mercedes some hope.
Yeah, when you're, when you're teammates, you have to keep the beef that you might have. You kind of have to squash that and just, be teammates. Do what's best for the TP, do what's best for the team. But I think Cookie and Gecko will definitely do that. They're big boys. I'm sure they'll put their differences aside and come together to make a good team over there.
I think with the Mercedes, it's looking to be the second fastest car. So Gecko, who won again for the first time in season 2, Cookie, who won again for the first time since the start of season 11. They could do well, but the problem is they gotta stop qualifying so well just to race so bad. Abu Dhabi, Cookie didn't have that happen, but they've had it happen too many times. And
they have to make sure the quality and the race pace match.
Yeah, exactly. Or else it's gonna be a huge issue. On to our next topic. yeah, a very fair point there. And other people we can name too for days and days on. But
yeah,
talking about our next topic and talking about things that seem to repeat itself. F2 shut down in season 18 for a little while, just to be brought back this game, and then we shut it down again at the start of season 22 due to lack of numbers. So that begs the question now, should F2 return next game, Polish? Skither wants it to.
Yes.
And why?
Just a short answer, yes. I think 100% it should come back because it is a nice little... It's just a nice little series to have, It's a nice change of pace from the F1 cars, I think. Having F2, having the sprint, having the feature, I think it's just a good all-around fun, I guess you'd say. It could even be some sort of like a feeder series to try and, recruit some people for maybe some tier 3. Bring F2 back. I think we got to figure out a good time for every person to be able to do it. I kind of like what we did a few months back was we had F2 the same day as tier 1. I think that's a fine idea, honestly. Maybe we could push back tier 1 just a tad and then push up F2 to maybe like 1 o'clock EST or like 6 o'clock British Standard Time. I think that could be a decent idea. But at the end of the day, it's up to the tier coordinator, but I do think it should come back, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Skither will have to try to work out something because we almost did get a full grid in that Baku race, which was utter chaos in season 21, and it seemed like everything was it seemed like everything was going to return to its old ways. I think the big problem, and speaking of old ways, is you could try to put some nostalgia in it, and it won't always work, but there's some nostalgia that has to stay. F2 used to have an identity because past champions used to move up after they won the championship. We don't need that, but what we do need is some sort of identity to the tier. We'll be having 450 races if we get another season going, completed. But yeah, I think the problem is F2 doesn't have its identity. I mean, take some of our drivers here. Titan, Griffiths, and then it became Raza Gamers. Just some drivers who were F2 exclusive. There's not enough of that anymore like it used to have. And I think that's going to be the big problem you got to look at. What is making F2 this way? And why would we start it again just for attendance to decline? It's definitely some questions that has to be raised ahead of the next game. And there's a lot of things that have to be figured out. But also, there needs to be a lot more recruitment for the sake of it too, because if there's not, then we won't see that return. However, go ahead. You were saying.
I was gonna say, and that's what I was talking about the whole feeder. It could be a possible feeder series to like tier 2, tier 3, because you think about people that raced F2 back in the day that are now like very, very decent in tier 1. You got Alex Norris. You got people. You got people that were pretty good in F2 and kind of made influence themselves in F2. So. You never know. It could happen again.
Either way, on to our 5 good minutes. SV, good to have you. And I want to talk about your Monaco win last season. First off, because that Monaco win, it seemed like it changed your RPL career. Obviously, you won it in the stewards room, but you put on a good performance that day. And also, you came back after a ban for driving that was unnecessary, we'll say. How would you, yeah, how would you look at that in terms of how it shaped your RPL career?
To be honest, blunt answer, I don't think it changed it, but I think it's changed people's perspective on how I drive. Really, that's it. Short. That's short and simple.
I mean, with that win, I do want to know, is it harder to win an RPL race than you thought it was after you won?
Uh, I I thought in a Ferrari it would be slightly harder, but it was slightly more easier. Yeah, yes, I didn't get a podium win after that, but I think I had the pace to win one or two more. So I'd say slightly easier than I thought it would be.
Polish, I'll let you handle the next question for SV,
Oh,
and
it's my turn.
maybe we could talk about driving. I don't know.
All right. Well, this has been something I've been dying to ask you. What do you think
Oh
about
boy.
Lund getting banned, SV?
I think it was hard to deserve because he got into too many massive, major incidents. He like every couple of races, like Monza, I think it was where he moved under braking into parabolica, shoved
Yep.
Jack off.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was right.
Spa with TV and Jack, an airplane crash into the chicane after the straight. Spot as well, moving under braking. Had the issue at Abu Dhabi as well. Pushed well off in Brazil. I think it's just if he had minor incidents, like a tap here, a tap there, he may have not been like banned. But he got into way too many massive, huge accidents with the Liga and especially as well.
I agree. Yeah, he did like taking out Adams. That is true. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want your thoughts as well because you got into many incidents and you had a small ban from a short period of time. So
Yeah, keep bringing it up, Brian.
Well, I mean, it's fair to get the guy who got banned for driving for a bit to get his thoughts.
Fair-
But no,
fair enough.
I do want to know in terms of topics that do remain on the driving sense. Tier 3 standards took a little bit of a dip at the end of the game cycle, especially in races like Singapore, Abu Dhabi. What needs to change? You race Tier 3 full-time next season, next game, so what do you think needs to change?
I think everyone just needs to calm down because we had some decent races where, look, the standards are good. Like Canada, arguably, it was decent race with standards, I think, near the front. Then Monaco wasn't. I think all the street circuits were just absolute mayhem. But everything else is relatively calm, apart from the 2-3 bad races. Yeah, just everyone needs to calm down. Really, you don't need to go for the move. You don't need to go for the send. Just calm. I think that will sort it out, and maybe Mali bring in the assist restrictions, because like esport races like with CRE ABE, like just everything's so much cleaner and there's less assists, and that might transform a driver to become better, more chill and relaxed. So, I think there's multiple factors
Polish,
to be changed.
Did you have anything else, Polish?
Oh, not on that topic. No, I was kind of just agreeing with.
Well, I mean, yeah, on a different one though.
But yeah, on a different topic, I'll stick with kind of the same kind of thing right here. So we have a lot of rivalries in RPL, as you're aware. We've got we've got like Cookie and Gecko. We've got Invade and Mally to a sense. But then we have a certain rivalry with you and a certain Ferrari driver, Ardell.
Yeah, what's that about?
Is this something that we could see boil over into next
You and
season?
Ardell, by the way.
No, unless he like straight lines, it won't boil over. And it's only because he's always dirty to me whenever I race him side by side. He always gives me like a cold shoulder. Everyone told me up in the same party in MLR.
I remember that.
Yep, I was gonna ask if it was one-sided.
Yeah.
I mean, on a similar sense, I do want to ask because you raced in Tier 2 twice last season, maybe 3 times. Regardless, I want to ask about the attendance though, not necessarily why you were not in Tier 2 anymore. I want to ask about attendance specifically because you raced for Ferrari in Miami, you raced in Spa where there were only 13, 14 people. Why do you think Tier 2 attendance has dipped off so much? I mean, regardless of drivers being moved up and demoted, there's still an attendance dip regardless of that.
Low-key, I think assist restrictions didn't help it. Like, I knew like 2 or 3 people who said I don't really want to race tier 2. Like Hyper said he didn't want tier 2 because of the medium traction, which I can understand. He's just a chilled out racer, wants to race on the 4TC. But I also just think it might just be a slight like inconvenience to race on a Saturday evening because there's a lot of other leagues that also operate then for like that type of pace level. You get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, SB, it has been a pleasure to have you for 5 good minutes.
Yeah,
and I do hope you enjoy next season, next game, and also these off-season races if you're doing any.
I've heard ethanol, but
we ball.
Polish.
I can see it.
Time for the big finish. And
it is.
One thing I do want to mention that we didn't mention with SV that we'll go on about obviously later on at some point eventually, not in this episode too much, but Dirty Air, there's more of that next game. However, what there is more of next game, we found out earlier this week that you can customize your helmet to where you can add designs to it. Yes, like logos of more than just logos of some sort. You can add actual sponsors, it seems. What are your thoughts on this, Polish? Is this a step in the right direction? Do we think this is false hope for EA adding even more?
I vibe with it. EA can absolutely add cosmetics and stuff like that as long as they just fix the stuff that actually matters. You know, it's a cool little. I think EA does this sometimes where they kind of just add some new stuff to kind of turn away, make people turn away from things that are actually wrong with the game.
Yeah, maybe.
But I do think it's a good idea. I do think it's a good change. I think it's a fun change. But they need to fix. I think there's other things they could have
For sure.
time into, if you will.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say on that.
No, neither do I. But we are going to our next topic, which is Jordan, Tadpole, Uri, and Joe Wilson are all signed as reserves for their respective academies on F124. You would know more about that. I know Uri's at Merck Academy, but I don't remember the others off the top of my head.
I don't remember the others either. I just know Tadpole's at Ferrari, and just a one correction, 25, not 24. I know everyone's still used to 24.
25, my fault.
No, you're okay. But 2 champions in there, Uri from Tier 3, Tadpole from Tier 2, Joe Wilson and Jordan, that keeps the nostalgia going. Those guys have been longtime members, so it is very nice to see. Speaking of longtime members and also spots like reserve spots, now full-time spots here, the only full-time spot available for F125 is next to Invade's Tier 2 Sauber spot. That's the second Sauber. If anyone wants a full-time spot, Polish, you better go claim it now.
Yeah, you better go claim it now. I know it's a bit of a yucky moment trying to drive for Sauber, the worst team, and that's probably why it's still open. And you know, obviously Tier 2 having attendance issues, but I think someone will claim that up. I'm sure someone will claim it up by the end of the week. I'll be honest.
End of the week, cool.
Yeah, because you know everyone's going to be scrambling. Everyone wants to run full time. No one wants to run part time unless you don't really have the time. But it is what it is. But yeah, you know. Moving on to our next topic, Wrecked by Storm promoted to a commentator. Wrecked by Storm, obviously a Tier 2 driver. Tier 3 driver, excuse me. He was just messaging one of the admins saying that he wanted to start commentating. He used to commentate Rainbow Six Siege, surprisingly enough. So he'll be doing some Tier 2 races as a backup to me and Faded if one of us can't be there.
Yeah, so for Wrecked by Storm, he's probably just going to stick around as co-commentator for a reserve spot. Not bad. I mean, if he does improve, maybe he can be Tier 1 co-com to Titan. Who knows? We'll have to find out when the time comes. But he has the previous experience. Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear that. You know, but it's nice. He got his first RPL point in Abu Dhabi, by the way. So congrats as well there. Yeah, still undecided on whether I want to make you main com or Faded main com, but I think it's going more toward your direction this way. Yeah. However, speaking of Tier 2, though, keeping ourselves on that topic, Night Owl, instead of getting the record to himself, he's going to share it with Jak Miles on having the most points in a single Tier 2 season instead of beating Jak for it. I mean, Stores Report kind of determined that. I don't really think we need to mention too much more with this, but he had a very good season, though, Polish.
Obviously, yeah, Night Owl had a fantastic season. At the end of the day, he said he really wanted the record, and he still technically has it, quote-unquote. You know what they say, sharing is caring. at the end of the day.
Yeah,
But
that's nice of
he's
him.
he is champion. I don't think it really matters. But something that does definitely matter is JTK losing the tier 1 the tier 1 win in the stewards room, and Jak also lost a podium due to a penalty. Cryptic jumped all the way to P2 at the end of the race.
Yeah, Cryptic just seems to be there in the end. Whether he's doing something or not, he gets another P2 in the stewards room after crazy drama unfolding. Jak, I'm a bit surprised he did lose it, but he made a silly move on Leo. I think it was just desperation kicking in to try to get that 4P for an Abu Dhabi victory. You can't blame Jak for it. However, JTK was the first person to a backflip on this game and was the last. He technically did finish P1, so I mean, he finished P1 on a preseason event to start this game in Belgium, and then did so in Abu Dhabi, but didn't keep it. So I think JTK is consistent. I can't fault anything there. However, F1 Shorts had his Discord banned. He got to make a backup account and join back the server. Someone who can't, though, is Leo Lund. He has been banned, like we said, for reasons the admin said so on determining he's not clean enough to stay. We mentioned that in a video released not too long ago. Polish. I think this is the fair move for Leo's case. I mean, just because he didn't get a season ban doesn't mean it's unfair for the admins to determine he's too dirty to stay. And, it's not like previous years ago when Leon, was being dirty in the past. You could kind of make some excuses and say, look, I mean, this, that, but also you could say, well, he should be banned. Well, we're cracking down on that years later. Look at Zora, look at Gagi, look at numerous other drivers. Noah Boy, it's a continuous rate. However, at least F1 Shorts has not gone from the server completely, though.
Yes, the stewards are starting to finally crack down on dirty driving, which I'm glad to see.
Me too.
It was a little out of hand for a little while there, so it's good to see them. And I wonder if Shorts got his account banned because he didn't meet the age requirement.
No, someone reported him as being 11.
I mean, he's close enough.
That's just false information, I mean,
it's close. He's close enough. He's the closest to 11 as anyone in the server. But anyways, speaking of F2, a couple things back. Speaking of F2, if we complete the next F2 season, we will surpass 450 F2 races in RPL, and round 8 of season 13 F1 will also be race 250 in the tier.
Some milestones this next F1 game on F125, but we got to get there first. That is for sure. Polish, we have an off-season race as of recording this tomorrow, and we'll have more to come after tomorrow as well. And I say tomorrow because that's when we're recording this, but hey, when this is released, that off-season race will already be done. So it just seems like this week we're catching up on a week full of the Stewards Report being released a little late. I think every single week they've done a really good job up until this last week of releasing it on time and or earlier than expected. But of course, with it being the final race, nothing hurrying here. However, one more thing I want to mention before we sign off in Polish, just want your quick closing thoughts. We have a new Out of Context coming up very soon around Easter time, so this should be tons of fun to look forward to.
I do love the out of context moments. They are
Everyone
quite
does.
fun to watch.
Everyone does. Yeah, but, I mean, with our off-season Polish, need something to kill the time. That should kill the time.
Absolutely, and I don't think I'll get as many out of context clips as the last one. I think I was like half the video. Pretty much Monza was half the video of everyone screaming at each other in the Ferrari chat. It was fantastic. I loved it.
You and I were screaming at each other in Hungary, so maybe that'll make the 25th one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I did remember to get that clipped.
That was right before I left the league.
There you go. And then join it back, and here you are. Anyways, folks, we're going to sign off. Have a good night. Ryan Cyril's Polish Hammer 459. We are saying good night and goodbye. Let us know your thoughts. Do we get the topics right in terms of our opinions, or do we get it wrong? Let us know what you think down below. Until next time, see you then. Good night. Goodbye.